Hello, this is Edward with Built by Burke Concrete. I'm showing you or presenting a video of a project we did for Smithfield Foods out in St. Charles, Illinois. It's the wastewater treatment plant for the property. They've got two 70-foot diameter basins that are 20 feet deep, and then they got a smaller one that I think is like a 50-foot diameter, and I think only 16 feet deep, but regardless, they're pretty large. So here's an image of one of them. As you can see, all of the waste, obviously, Smithfield Food, they're a meat packer, so all of the garbage, debris and all that, it goes into the drains and it gets sent out to the first tank, which is called the equalization tank. And it was a big deal at the time because this right here is basically all rotting meat, and they use chemicals and whatnot to keep it from becoming like infectious. I don't know exactly what you would call it. I think they called it like to keep it from going gangrene, but they would put all kinds of chloride and other additives to keep it from smelling. But regardless, it was still pretty bad. So the village came in and demanded that they put a roof over it. And so this is the project of us basically, making a roof, putting a roof on it, as well as repairing any of the interior walls, because there was a lot of damage from all of the chemicals and additives that they did add in there. So this is it. As you can see, it starts with this, and then as we go on here, you can continue to see the other side of it. So it's incredibly large, big tank. I mean, it's huge. And so the first operation was, of course, pumping it out. So Smithfield got these temporary tanks where they were pumping it out from the big tank, which is off to the far corner, and they were pumping it from there into these tanks, and the tanks basically had to get taken to another sanitary station in a different town, and they would have trucks come weekly and empty these tanks and take it off to a different treatment center. And here's us pouring a pad for the I don't know how the line was, maybe 8 inches, pouring a pad for the 8-inch line between the equalization tank and the temporary tanks to keep it online, keep the facility online. This is the tank then, the equalization tank, after all of the garbage was drained and fed into the temporary tanks. As you can see, it's a lot different how deep it is. And they had a tar, this is all tar on it, as well as these machines right here used to pump air in to keep it aerated, and they did end up putting a new form of that in. So this is it after it gets pumped out. And then the first step was removing these basins. No one knows what these were for. The property's pretty old, and so they have plans going back to the 40s, and these things were in there. So nobody knows exactly what they were for. I think they were there's no hole in the bottom. It seems like they had ladders so someone could climb down in there, but it's a little unknown. But this is us basically removing it, put up the scaffolding. We got a crane out there. And the other difficulty, too, was with this project is that right next to them, they're next to an airfield, so you have to get a permit for being over, I believe, 80 or 100 feet if you're going to be near the airport. So that was a difficulty that we ran into, but regardless, we did end up getting it done. And this is the rest of the tank. You can see just how tall it is, and you can already see the previous patches from other contractors and or the facility themselves. It had been worked on over the years, but it was in pretty bad condition. So you can see following through. Then we had an outside basin we had to deal with. This one was filled entirely with concrete, which I was not expecting, so we had to demo it in its entirety. But once we got it all drained, they brought a cleaning company in, cleaned it all out, and then Actually, this is kind of towards the end, but we had scaffolding. Basically, I had to get my scaffolding subcontractor brought in, and he erected a full swing circle going around the entire tank. And following that, we were doing sounding, so you can see the paint here. We would come by just with a hammer, and you would knock on it, and you could hear pretty immediately whether or not it was hollow or if it was solid. And it changed pretty quickly. The upper parts, we brought the engineer in, and he was out of town. They did not originally want to drain it down for the engineer to make a first impression inspection. So to give them recommendations on how to move forward. So he was kind of going off of really going into it blind. And they had given us a limitation on what to assume for the damage on it. And when we got in there, it ended up being a lot worse than what they had initially inspected because, they never made the time to drain it down for the engineer to go in and inspect it. He could only see the top 5 feet of it where you could see here. So, but this is them, like I said, erecting all the scaffolding. And then this was the fun stuff. So once you're in there and all the scaffolding's set, bring your guys in, you bring in your air hammers, grinders, and after you do the sounding and you find the areas that are dilapidated and damaged, you just start chipping at it, and it goes pretty quickly. So you could see right there just how much we got out. There's 3 levels to these scaffolds. There's the side view looking across it. And I don't know if you could see the numbers, but to make sure everyone was on the same page, because some of the engineers were out of state, we did it like a clock every, I'm not exactly sure. It was 220 linear feet, on its diameter. So whatever that was, we split it up into 24 hours, and we would give the time. If the engineer wanted to know a certain area, we would give him the time on it, and he would be able to make a decision, level 3, hour 3, and he could see like, okay, I know right there's an issue. But this is them coming through, grinding it, chipping it out to where there was a solid base, because the face was just deteriorated from all of the chemicals that they'd used over the years. I mean, this thing, nobody had drained this thing. Anybody that worked there at Smithfield, the guys that had been working there for 30 plus years, said that they've never seen it drained. So this is the first time it was drained in a very long time. As you can see, the damage, guys are coming through. And this was a hole that we were using as access to remove all the material and tools. Because that's actually, this thing sits, a little bit below. So the ground is actually to the bottom of that pipe right there. But you could see just how much prep work with the scaffolding and then demolition took place. And we had to prep the holes at the top. As you can see the little notches. We had to basically bring this whole thing out by another 2 inches. The top 4 feet, we had to bring out by another 2 inches because it was so deteriorated at the top that the roof that they were going to put on was a little too large, so they needed an overhang to keep it on solid, wall. So it was pretty damaged. And after we stripped it all down to good concrete, we did end up bringing in a sandblaster and we cleaned off. The rebar was in surprisingly good shape. It wasn't as rusted out as we initially had thought, but once we came in with the sandblaster, for the most part, it all held up. There was actually very little rust or damage to the metal rebars, so that was definitely an added plus for them. Made them, a lot savings, because if we had to replace the rebar, that would have been another ordeal. But so once you finish chipping it all out, you begin with your shot blasting. So get a pump and you guys start mixing it on the back of a truck, and You got 2 guys down there. It's a big ordeal. You get 2 guys at the pump, 2 guys on the truck, and then you got another one keeping watch. They communicate with not their phones. I can't think of the name, but they communicate with not telephones, speakers. And anyways, so we came through. Like I said, the top 4 feet they had to basically bring out by a minimum of 2 inches to keep the roof, because the thickness of the roof was going to be overhanging on the inside of the tank a little bit if they didn't end up doing that. So you could see, we're shotcreting all of it, and it's get it pretty flat. It was towards the end of summer here for us when we started doing it, so we had to get blankets and whatnot. There were some issues, obviously, with, like I said, the engineer. Smithfield did not drain it down fully for the engineer to make an initial assessment, a true initial assessment on the condition of the tank. So when we started breaking it down, there were some issues of, what was to be done. So some of the project did get put on hold for a couple weeks while a decision was made on, how far to continue with the project. So it did end up pushing us into the winter. There were some issues, too, with the village, because the village was the one that was demanding the roof in the first place. They had ended up holding it up, the permitting process. So it pushed us kind of back. It was a pretty tight project, to say the least. But you can see all the blankets. We already got the middle. We had that done the prior week, so that was all good. It was just kind of the top that we caught the tail end. And you can see guys are nailing them down. Oh. And then this is them coming through, shotcreting it. Looks pretty good. It was cool. Guys come in. This is, like you saw in those images earlier, all the rebar. This is it after the fact. Guys are taping all the scaffolding, keeping it from getting dirty. They come in, grade it, and it looks pretty good. This is the truck setup, so you get one guy back there, another guy helping him. I think he was running back and forth. And he mixes it in, and it pumps it. You can see all the lines using air hoses. And it blows it on. Pretty cool. And this is it after the fact. So this is after they filled it back up with all of the garbage. They lost the temporary tanks. And this is actually the crane for the roof. And you can see just how much we had to thicken it up. And you can't even, it's already up to the top of where we had repaired it. In the middle where we grinded down and chipped out all the concrete. So it looked pretty good. Then this is the roof right here. You could see these guys were having some difficulty because it was pretty windy out, but they had to get a permit for the crane. The airport is like right behind there. So this was, that's the roof right there. And then there was a lot of work on the exterior of the tank that you don't exactly see, but they needed access. To get access, to the tank, there's another hole underneath there, so we had to remove this wall here. That was it after the fact. You can see the inside of the tank. Then we had this building. They were calling it the blower building, and it was old. Most of it was non-functional. You could see it all right there. They had some old pads, and they had us rip it out. So we just brought the excavator in with a breaker, and it busted it out. So you could see right there how much of a difference it is. Brought in fill and filled it back in. Oh, and that's, you could see even the second tank right next to it, right next to the one we're working on. So in this image right here, you could see the tank that we were doing was to the right, and they got another one the exact same size to the left, which is the second tank. And but again, you can see the fill that we put in where the building was. So we ripped the whole building down. This is us removing all of the soil and concrete that was removed. There was quite a bit. Most of it's all gone there. We already hauled it out. And then we had to do some more. There was a lot of additions to this project. So we did end up having to dig for the electrician. And this is that. As you can see, we were digging for the other building. They initially wanted to put it all overhead. and then they decided it would be best to do it, underground, which is the best. It's the correct way to do it. So this is us pouring concrete on all of it. This is a water main that we ended up doing. And then this is a pad. They put a pad for an aerator, so we did that. And you can see the new stairs too that we put in. Or we didn't put the stairs in themselves, but pads and all that. So it was a big difference. But that's it. So if anyone's looking for industrial or commercial concrete in the Chicagoland area, reach out to us. Our website link is in the description. Industrial, commercial, Chicagoland area. Reach out. Thank you.